Hello, crypto community. Jeff Kirdeikis here with Alexander Zaidelson, the CEO of Beam. Thanks so much for coming on today, Alexander.
Hey, Jeff. Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here. Love your
So,
work so far.
awesome. Yeah, so far these 10 seconds have been fantastic.
No,
Top
I mean
notch.
what I read on online
Love it. Cool.
and uptrends and stuff.
So
Yeah.
yeah, love it. Thank you. So jumping right in, I feel like the ethos, the why, is the most important part. For everyone here in cryptocurrency and this decentralized movement. So what is the why, the driving ethos behind Beam, and what flaws or problems did you see in the conventional system of traditional finance or whatever it may be that you kind of really inspired you to get going with this project?
So what inspired us to get going with this project is initially was the lack of privacy. Just the lack of good scalable privacy solution for cryptocurrency, because the original crypto dream was to replace money, right? Either as store of value or as means of exchange, ideally in any and every kind of use. But it turns out that without privacy, this just won't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's no way. If all your transactions are broadcast to the world in the open, you can't really use that as money, right? You need privacy solutions. So that was the original motivation, and the Mimblewimble protocol seemed then and appears now to be a great step forward to privacy and scalability together. Although we're making improvements to it as well in multiple respects. Now, as we move forward, we realized that besides privacy, we also need to think about usability and great user experiences, and we spent a lot of time on that and a lot of effort on that. To me, Beam is solving the privacy, the usability, and in 2020, Beam will be expanding beyond the initial just single currency. We already started in the end of last year with Atomic Swap. We'll be expanding to build a fuller ecosystem of different financial applications, all with the same principles of privacy and great usability.
Right, makes sense. And that's the big value. One of the big value propositions of Beam is that privacy. It's something that really sets you apart from a lot of the currencies that are out there. A lot of people say, especially governments will kind of push this rhetoric of, if you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't be afraid of transparency, and privacy is for drugs and criminals and all those kinds of things. What is your, philosophy on privacy in terms of, our rights, or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are that privacy is a basic human right, and it's actually written in a lot of laws, right? It's illegal in most countries to get into other people's private lives, steal their information, publish it, and so on. But the governments are actually doing that all the time with our finances, with all the surveillance, with the big corporations getting all our data. So while privacy is kind of being upheld as a basic human right in the laws, in reality, we lose our privacy, and it's not there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So all this rhetoric of privacy is for bad people is just it's hypocritical and wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody has the right for privacy, financial or otherwise, and it means privacy from other people and from the government, even more so, because government is also other people and they have power to abuse this private information that they have.
Yeah.
So privacy is very, very, very important. Now, that said, and it was also one of the key ideas behind Beam. A financial system that is untraceable and unprovable, even if with the desire of the owner, is also problematic, right? Because if I'm a business, right, of course I don't want anyone to know about my transactions, but there are certain situations where I have to show my transaction graph if I choose so. I have to show my transactions. And that is the idea behind the opt-in auditability, right? So eventually you want to create a system where businesses can also use Beam as their main monetary instrument or main currency, and be able to present their transaction history to whoever they choose to. We don't believe that businesses will all move to this anarchic space of not reporting or not paying taxes, whether we like it or not, right? Still, sometimes taxes are good because they're paying for roads or hospitals and other stuff. So, but again, we want like the idea is to give people the choice, right? So that if you want to, you are completely private. Nobody sees your transaction history. Nobody sees how much money you have. But if you want to report, you can do that, and in a credible and provable way.
Right. Yeah. So you guys are creating essentially a double opt-in system for people who want privacy. You can do that. Or if you're a corporation who, like you say, essentially by law, if you're tax reporting and legal, you can't just say, oh, it's all obscured. Who knows what we've spent it on? If you're tax reporting, you need to have that auditability feature. So you guys are really going for essentially the two
only
branches.
Controlled by you, right? So way in the beginning, one of the way I presented privacy was not just hiding your information, but it's also controlling your information. So it's being able to hide everything, but also being able to share certain parts to certain people, right? Because if you think of it, none of us usually has like full, complete, 100% privacy, because you sometimes want to share some of your very private, thoughts or matters with somebody close, right? Or with a professional, right? And that's totally fine. So you need to be able to do that, because if all your information is hidden and cannot be shared, it's also a problem.
Yes.
Right. And the key is to allow you to control that, to control who sees what and who you share what with.
Got it. And, on the topic of control, we have a lot of governments, especially recently, China coming in, really imposing some big regulations on cryptocurrency. I'm going in with DCEP, which is essentially going to be like the most transparent currency, or like pseudo private, like they're trying to population control, essentially. It's not crypto for the good guys, it's crypto for control. And I think that's what a lot of governments are really trying to battle with right now, is like that control, and how do we manage this and undertake it. And the project of Beam is different. If you, for example, just a Grin, for example, has no corporate structure, but Beam does have a corporate structure. So what protections do you guys have in place in terms of immutability for, the pressures of political or government pressures, or, if an authority places pressure to investigate money laundering, how do you guys respond to those kind of political pressures?
So there are two answers. So first, as a company, we are, of course, vulnerable. There's a company that has, a CEO and a management structure, and that's why we're moving away from that. As of now, the company had finished its role in kickstarting Beam. Okay, right. So now the control is actually transferred to a nonprofit foundation that doesn't have shareholders, that has an independent board, and all the decisions and strategic decisions are being made there. So my role as a CEO kind of diminishes, right?
Right.
So as a company, we were vulnerable. In principle, somebody could come over to me and say, "Well, Alex, we want to build a backdoor into the software, or else." Okay. Luckily, it didn't happen. Now, so we're addressing this vulnerability of a company, of a centralized body, by making it less centralized in a nonprofit entity that will continue managing and building the strategy for the protocol. However, with time, we want to, the foundation will actually work to make it like totally decentralized, and in like several years, it will probably dissolve itself, so that there's no body whatsoever. Okay. Now, in terms of this issue you mentioned, that somebody can come and demand some information from us about transactions, about the users, and so on. So here we're covered because we don't have any information, right? The information I have as the CEO of Beam about the transactions on the network is exactly the same as information you have as the user of Beam that has a wallet and a node. So I don't have, so even if I wanted to, which would never happen, but even if I wanted to, I cannot provide anyone any information about what's going on the network other than the information that's actually there in the open, like number of transactions and number of coins minted every block and total number of coins and so on. But yes, this is definitely an issue. And from the get-go, we knew that the company setup has its advantages and has its disadvantages. And from the get-go, we saw it as like a sort of a temporary, as a temporary solution for the first layer of Beam. Okay,
Gotcha.
for basic protocol. And I think we've proven that as a company with funding, we were able to make a lot of development, deliver a lot of high quality software, establish ourselves as a very strong player in the space. And now it's the next step. And the third step will be like full decentralization, but it will take some time.
For sure. Yeah. And I think, like you say, there's so much value in being able to start centralized and be able to, accrue some working capital so that you can really build nice wallets, nice UI, good interfaces, ease of use. Because it's a lot more slow going when you just have volunteer developers, and it's just kind of like off the, passion equity. It just doesn't move as fast. So I agree. There's a whole lot of benefits to that. We launched a few questions on Twitter, or just an open forum for people to ask questions. And one user, username Crypto Insights, had a question regarding this. He says, so how can you explain how governance will be ever truly decentralized if there are VC investments? Specifically, how will the VC power be removed from Beam, or is that the plan of the foundation, and how will that all look?
Okay, so let me take. Okay, so Beam's financial model is based on treasury, right? So in the first 5 years, 20% of all the minted coins go to the treasury, and from there they go to three major constituents. So one is the VCs. Okay, VCs invested about $5 million, so they're getting their coins. They're not actually influencing the decisions. They're not on the board. They're friends, and we're talking to our investors, but as friends, they don't have actual power to tell us or the project what to do. So there's no VC control. This is like a misconception, like there are some big powerful VCs that are controlling anything. It does work like that, and it does work like that in traditional startups where VCs get board seats and control the way the company operates and control the strategy. It does work like that in crypto. So our investors receive their tokens, and they're friends, but they're not controlling us, right? So this is the first part. The second part is the team and advisors. Okay, so team members and advisors also receive coins from the treasury, again on the same schedule as everyone else, meaning over 5 years in small installments. And then the remainder goes to the foundation, and it was slated from the beginning to be used after the VC money runs out. Okay, right. So these 20% of the treasury, which is actually 4% of all the minted coins, and it's also very important to understand it's not a huge amount. A lot of people see, oh, there's a treasury, so there will be a dump, like dump. Okay, so as I mentioned, the treasury is distributed between about 20 plus VCs on the investor side, many people on the team and advisors, okay, also like I think 20 plus, and the foundation. So there is no single buy. So the foundation is the single largest holder of tokens, or the single largest beneficiary of the treasury, and it is only 4% of the treasury. So it's not like there is somebody sitting on a huge pile of coins and will dump, right? So the foundation actually will be acting very responsibly, because again, no one is in this game for a short period of time, right? It's not like myself. I'm in the game for like, or you know, the foundation is in the game for 5 years, right? So there's no point of dumping anything, right?
Yeah.
You wanna, even if you sell, and the foundation will very likely need to sell coins to support the development, it will do it very carefully without influencing the market price. By the way, the liquidity today with Beam is pretty good, and you know, the daily volumes are, you know, from what I remember on Binance, is like $1 to $2 million, like real action, and so there's no real danger of at least the foundation dumping anything.
Yeah, and that's good because, like you say, I feel there's always a lot of disparity between, you know, the liquidity, what's in the order books, and the volume that you see on CoinMarketCap, because, you know, so there's so much wash trading happening these days. So when the volume is real, and if it's so they do have the liquidity metric on CoinMarketCap now, which I do quite like. So it shows how much support a project has, and I haven't checked for Beam, but that's really good to hear that there is some depth there. And I agree. It's like mutually assured destruction. You know, the foundation isn't going to do a big market single event dump because, well, now you guys are essentially out of a job, out of passion. It's just everyone loses faith and everybody loses.
Well, and the thing is, even if they wanted to, they can't, because A, they don't have that much coin,
right?
And B, they don't have all of it because it's spread over 5 years. So the bigger part is still to come, and the treasury is released every month. Yes. So nobody in this whole group of holders has an interest to dump, because they're still in this for a long period.
Gotcha on the financial side for sure. So something that's actually of a massive personal interest to me, and that I'm really diving in, I'm on my own project as well, is decentralized systems and how it relates to the governance of the protocol. So, you know, you're saying that you're moving into a fully decentralized system, and I'm curious, you know, what is that going to look like in terms of the decision-making power? Is that going to be, you know, one coin equals one vote? And how will things ideally look, you know, when you fast forward 5 years in the future in terms of, you know, how Beam is run as an organization?
Well, 5 years from now, I would envision a system where we have something like Beam improvement proposals, like we have Bitcoin improvement proposals, where people submit those. Those are discussed by a broad community. Then people create pull requests, and then based on the community discussion, community acceptance, those pull requests are merged into the main branch. So that's the way Bitcoin works, right? So there is in Bitcoin, like, although there is some argument who exactly controls it, of course, there is a group of people who has much bigger influence on the future of Bitcoin, but it's pretty decentralized. There's a lot of different opinions, a lot of different people. So we would want to get to this kind of governance. So it's not really formal. I don't think that we will go to like coin-based voting mechanisms, because these can be rigged. It may be a little bit problematic, because someone who amasses a large amount of coin can, you know, do bad things, or can rig the system into their favor. Yeah. And also, if there is like a mass voting, it can be, you know, that people can be bribed to vote a certain way, and so on. So I think, at least for now in crypto, what works is a community of people who are passionate, like sort of a meritocracy-based community where people are weighed by their contributions in whatever way they can, and it's like a loose democratic system, but a loose one, not like one person, one vote. Because then I think it's very hard to enforce correctness and fairness of such a vote when you're such a distributed system, because you don't really know who the person is. And, you know, for Beam specifically, right, voting by coins is a bit problematic, right? It's a private currency, so you don't really know how many coins a person has. I mean, you could technically come up with a way, but right now, The ideal is to have like this distributed community where voting kind of happens organically and a little bit loosely.
Yeah,
Mold.
And I fully
But again,
agree with you.
there's a long way, right? So right now, the foundation board will be taking the most critical decisions, right? Of course, listening to the community. We also plan to have like a community funding system at some point in the future, where people will submit their proposals and the foundation will decide whether to fund or not fund them. So this is a step forward to increasing the community involvement.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's a lot easier to go incrementally than to just open the floodgates and then backpedal. So, to have the foundation.
Well, this is our way. It's it's hard to say what is actually the best, but this is our way so far. It's been working well. Hopefully, will continue to work well in the future. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and on the one person, one vote, I see the huge relevance there. I was just listening to a podcast with Nick Szabo, and he was saying, he was commenting on people who are voting on like the SegWit and the New York proposal and all these kinds of things. And he's like, it shouldn't be one person, one vote. It should be the people who are experienced make the votes. You're not going to, if you're like doing brain surgery, you're not going to ask the general public which move you should make. You should ask the people who have experience. And so although a lot of people, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's, if you ask me, in political governance or voting in a country, I think it should be exactly one person, one vote.
Right.
Because it's like the lives of everyone, and if you say that only a qualified person can vote, then who chooses what qualified means?
Yes.
Right. And this works more or less in the political system, because you can really enforce that one person gets one vote, and you fight all the attempts to bribe voters. In our crypto ecosystem, it's very hard to achieve. And also the questions are, they do require more like specialization. So that's why the people who are more knowledgeable and contribute more, they usually get more weight. But it's very hard to quantify. And there are some attempts to quantify the contribution by whatever lines of code or number of rows. But from what I see, it's more like an implicit metric of the amount of respect the person has in the community, and so on and so forth. It's very hard to quantify, and quantification here may lead to bad results.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. If you gave the analogy of the political system, if China were to do political weighting on people's voting, well, they have their social credit score, and now people who follow the leader, their votes worth more, and then it creates a self-perpetuating system. So,
well, they don't really have like real voting there, right? They're just weighing
this is
people
true.
by.
Yeah.
So it doesn't even go to decision making.
Yeah.
It just goes to like profiling you by what you do, and this is really scary. This is really scary. This is like a dystopian society. Thing is, I mean, it's not there yet in the Western world, but we see some, with the NSA listening to everyone, that I'm not even sure they stopped doing that. Maybe they continue doing that. So they do have this kind of a weight for everyone. Now, also, if you express some unpopular opinions in social media in the States or in Israel, it may have repercussions on your career and yours. I mean, it's not like a state-sponsored thing yet, and I hope it won't happen. And we'll fight fight this kind of developments. But there is the system has a lot of information on you, and it uses it in certain ways. So in China, it's becoming very explicit. In the West, it's less explicit, but still it is there. So whatever you do is observed and collected. Now the question is like when someone gets the power to analyze it and make decisions based on that. So this part is not explicitly there yet. But I'm sure a lot of people would want to do that in the name of fighting crime. It would be so wonderful, just profile everyone who has some aggressive behavior and just, lock them up preventively, right? And so on. Yeah. So it is scary.
Definitely. Yeah. And there's already so much profiling going on. And you could say like micro levels of this happening in the West. Like you say, it is very subjective, but even just a few couple days ago, with the altercation with Iran, you wouldn't be surprised in the least to start seeing them implement features like this and everyone just totally bending over for that feature in the name of security and greater good. So it's such a slippery slope. And, people are
Yeah.
so complacent and comfortable with what we have on media, Facebook, and our finances, and everything is just so. And like we have our Alexa, it's always listening. Our phones are always listening, and we're aware of this, and yet we don't do anything about it. And that to me is the scariest thing: is that we're aware of it, yet we don't make any changes in our habits in our lives.
Well, some people do, but most people don't. Most people don't
Hmm.
because most people mistakenly think that privacy is for criminals.
And or
And
that the
most people
government has our
think,
best interest at heart.
and most people think, yeah, well, I don't care if everybody knows what I buy and what I read and so on. But if you think of it a little bit more, then even if you don't do anything you think is bad, but if somebody knows everything you buy, everything you read, everything you search for, they can just start, making fun of you or attacking you. Why did you buy this at 2 a.m. in the morning? What did you hear? Why did you read this? It's a problem. And we saw like this kind of social shaming and issues like that. So people need to understand that what the information about them can be used against them, even if they're
Yes.
not doing anything bad. So you need to be careful. You need to think about, having all your messaging encrypted and trying to use, web browsers that don't store that much information and so on and so forth.
Yeah. And I
Because
think this is
any
it.
information that you give away might be used against you.
And a lot of people feel this comfort of oh, it's legal now, I can throw out this tweet, I can say this thing on Messenger. But the thing is they don't realize that all this information can get back checked. If someone says, hey, anyone who now supported or was counter the Iran war, we're now checking all your phones, we're going into your house, we're looking through your things because you're now a suspected terrorist, for example. All these
Yeah,
things are
and
possible.
this is really scary because in the name, if you do things in the name of security or the nation or against our enemies, then most of the people would usually agree to that. I mean, it's easy, like the Patriot Act in the States, okay, everybody said, well, that's just fine, search us, profile us, it's okay. And this is scary. This is scary, but again, I think as time goes by, more and more organizations spring up, and more people understand that this is something we as the society need to control and fight, and not let
Mm-hmm.
the government just take all the information. Because if we let them, I mean, they would prefer everyone walk around naked so that nobody conceals a weapon, right?
Yeah.
Just and then no, or everybody will live in glass houses so that there's no crime and you cannot kidnap people or whatever. But and this is what's happening in the digital sphere, right? That's what they are trying to do in the digital sphere, and we need to fight that. And we
Mm-hmm.
as BEAM are fighting that in the financial sphere because coming back to Bitcoin and Ethereum and other big projects. In the beginning, the governments were kind of wary, but then they said, wow, there is this beautiful tool, beautiful system where we can actually see a lot of stuff. We can see what's going on. We can, mark certain coins as bad. We can surveil what's going on, and so on and so forth. And it's a problem, and that's why privacy coins sprang up to counter exactly this.
And how do you see the adoption of privacy coins going moving forward? You look at potentially decentralized YouTube alternatives, and those are having a tough time catching on. Decentralized Facebook alternatives, those are having a tough time catching on. And it's all because of this, complacency, ease of use, familiarity. What do you feel is the magic bullet for privacy coins and Beam in particular to be able to onboard a mass amount of users? What's the message you guys are putting across, the angle, or the story you're telling?
So I don't think there is a magic bullet, first of all, right? I think that as general adoption of crypto grows, more and more people will turn to privacy coins. Today, the biggest use case for crypto is still speculation, right? People buy and sell. And then they don't really care about privacy, right? Because anyway, they're doing that on KYC exchanges. The exchange knows everything. So this is the major use. So some people care about privacy, and we see privacy coins having a very prominent place. Monero is about $1 billion market cap. I think it's in top 20 now. Zcash. So yeah, Monero is actually in top 10. So there is a need for privacy. People understand the need, but not in full. As people start using crypto more and more for real store of value, for real business, then the need for privacy will grow, right? And the interest in privacy will grow. And a lot of industry leaders see that 2020 will be a year where privacy will be more prominent. So for Beam, there is no silver bullet, but in 2020 we will be building solutions on top of Beam to expand the appeal of privacy and to, as they say, export the revolution, to export privacy to other areas. So, and I'll explain what I'm talking about. So one of the things that we already started working on is what we call bridges and confidential assets. So there is a lot of liquidity today on Ethereum, a lot of stable coins, a lot of other utility coins and other coins that are being traded without any privacy at all, right? It's even easier on Ethereum to see what you're doing than on Bitcoin, much easier. Just go to the Explorer with your address, I see all your transactions, all your holdings, everything. So what we're building is a way to create representations of any token on Beam. We call it a confidential asset. So there is the Beam coin, but there will be other coins as well, other tokens. And there will be a way to take your ERC20 tokens, like say the DAI coins, log them in a smart contract, and have the same amount of, let's call them BDAI or Beam DAI or confidential DAI, minted for you and magically appearing in your Beam wallet. And then you can trade them inside the Beam network, but you can also redeem them back at any moment. Okay, so that way we are offering this privacy to a lot of people who are currently using those stable coins or other tokens, but I think it's mostly stable coins. This is, by the way, if you ask me, this is like the only use case that is getting real commercial business application today, en masse. So we will be offering privacy for those, and then later on, we will be adding up DeFi functionality onto that. Think about, creating collateralized debt positions or lending, again, in private, because, on the one hand, DeFi is growing in popularity and some people are doing stuff with that. But again, it's mostly based on Ethereum, meaning fully transparent. Do you want everyone to know how much money you owe to a bank or to a lender? Not really. Right? Yeah. So you need to have that privately. So this is the next step for us. And this way we'll expand usage, and we'll, of course, talk about privacy, promote the need for privacy anywhere we can. But again, from what I see, slowly but steadily, the market understands it. Brian Armstrong article pointed out the top trends. The first one was for 2020, first scalability. Which, by the way, if you ask me, I don't think it's the biggest problem right now. It's not like the networks are stuck where you can't make a transaction on Bitcoin. It's all working just fine for now. But number two for him was privacy. For me, privacy is number one.
Yeah. Yeah, and that article just came out, I think, 2 days ago. That's the one we're talking about, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So you mentioned, all these features that you're talking about, and then you mentioned, scalability within there. I feel like there's a lot to be said because, there's a lot of utility in what you're saying to be able to have these essentially wrapped assets or pegged assets, as well as DeFi, like you say, has really been taking off in a big way. Tons of Ether is locked in to DeFi right now. So what's your guys' plan in terms of scalability for the Beam network moving into the future?
So right now we're fine. We're absolutely fine. So the network can support, I think, like 1.5 million transactions per day, and we're now about 6,000, 10,000. So there is a lot of space.
Right.
But
just to double click, that translates to around 20 per second, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the maximum, 17 per second. And if you calculated that, that's pretty amazing.
I didn't. I maybe looked it up before.
Yeah, it's 17. It's like 1,000 transactions per block, and it's a block per minute.
Right.
So yeah. So it's about 17 per second, 20 per second. Now we have DAG research on our roadmap to solve the scalability issue or to improve scalability. So we originally planned to do it in 2019, but we actually prioritized other things like atomic swaps that we actually released, which is a pretty cool technology. I can talk about that as well. But we have some ideas on how to improve scalability in the future. Right now, this doesn't seem like the biggest problem or the biggest issue. So once it becomes closer and the network becomes more saturated, so then it will get more priority. But yeah, we have the idea of upgrading the basic layer by doing something with DAG.
Gotcha. And you mentioned the atomic swaps there. So that's going to happen within that kind of pegged asset pool. Is that how that's going to get?
So atomic swaps are already there. We released them in November. So it's sort of a distributed exchange, but not fully functional yet. So the thing is that you can publish right from the Beam wallet, by the way, you can publish an offer you can connect your Bitcoin wallet through Electrum server, and then you can publish an offer, say I want to exchange one Bitcoin for 20,000 for 10,000 Beam, and you just publish it, and everybody sees it. Everybody with a Beam wallet can see this offer and accept it.
Right.
And it's totally decentralized, and the transaction happens directly between the two parties atomically. So there's no counterparty risk at all. Mm-hmm. Okay. So to me, it's just the first step. The experience is good, but still can be improved. It's a very nice way for people to get into a confidential ecosystem without going through an exchange. So you have Bitcoin, you could just connect it to your Beam wallet and buy Beam from somebody else using these atomic swaps. By the way, we also support Litecoin and Quantum coins in the atomic swap functionality. So now atomic swap is different from one-to-one peg, right? Because if I exchange my Bitcoin for Beam, I'm now exposed to Beam price fluctuations and the other way around. So one-to-one peg is about removing the risk of fluctuation, because the B die, the confidential die on the Beam network, is equal to exactly one die and can be exchanged back at any moment. But these are all parts of the same thing. So we will also expand the atomic swap to confidential assets as well. So you would be able to take your die and then exchange it for Bitcoin or whatever other token in the same atomic swap manner. Right, and atomic swap again is today if you don't use atomic swap, then you have a counterparty. You have an exchange who is actually passing the money between people, and in this case, it's just direct.
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of amazing things that are happening with Beam right now, and there's so many projects in the crypto space right now, and even in the privacy space. And someone who may be tuning into this interview may be really excited about Beam, but maybe trying to kind of place Beam on the map. Okay, well, how does this compare to other coins out there? Is this a value proposition that I want to invest into, buy into, join the community, and become part of this ecosystem in comparison to other projects? Because obviously there's always that potential choice that needs to be made. So I'd say the big two that are out there right now that get compared, I feel frequently with Beam would be Grin and Monero. So obviously Monero, like you mentioned, top 10 cryptocurrency, and Grin. Maybe I'll let you kind of introduce both of them and how they differ from Beam, and where you may see upsides and downsides.
Sure. So Monero is a great project. It was like the pioneer and the first like big project in the crypto space. It's the first generation. By the way, you didn't mention Zcash. It's another
Right. My mistake.
project in the crypto space. So Monero is a great project, but first generation, right? They took the original, like very roughly speaking, original Bitcoin architecture and added stuff to obfuscate the transaction graph. Result, poor scalability, very large blockchain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the limitation of their technology. So it doesn't scale very well. So the per transaction storage required on Monero blockchain is like 5 times bigger than that of Bitcoin.
Right.
Okay. So meaning that if it had the same amount of usage today, the blockchain would be like over a terabyte, meaning very hard to run, very hard to synchronize. It hurts decentralization, right?
Right.
You need special equipment. So, but Monero has, in terms of governance, like it's really community based. It's a good model. Okay,
mm-hmm.
This is what eventually we would want Beam to be in, with a large community, many stakeholders, and so on. Now, Zcash has really amazing tech. The ZK Snarks is like, and they probably have some of the best cryptographers in the world. But Monero is more of a research project than a consumer-facing currency, right? So, and their technology, while it's really groundbreaking and amazing, it's super hard to understand, and that's why they discovered several very critical, hidden inflation bugs that only they could discover, because most of the people and even specialists in the space cannot grasp this technology. So it's a big problem. Also, scalability wise, Zcash per transaction is like 9 times bigger than Bitcoin. So again, same problem. And also with all this, the usage of private transactions on on Zcash is very limited. They have like less than 5% of transactions that are private. Most of them are totally public. So it's like right. Bitcoin with a privacy edition. So now, in terms of governance, though, we actually adopted part of their model. So they also have a treasury system where part of the coins go to support the further development, and they also have a company and a foundation. So it's a similar model. Again, we look up to them in terms of their scientific research, not so much in terms of usability and actual privacy of the product they built, because again, 95% is fully in the open. Okay. Now, Grin is one of our favorite projects. Some people think we're kind of competing because we both implement Mimblewimble. Mm-hmm. In some sense, yes, but we have very good relationships with some of their developers. We're talking to them a lot. We're sharing information a lot. And to me, I like the way they built their governance and community. Although, if you ask me, it could be a little bit more decentralized, because they still have like this core team of very few people in the council that are basically calling the shots, mm-hmm. right? It's not formal, but if we take the formalities aside, there's still like a relatively small group of people that's making most of the decisions. Okay, yeah. I hope they work and expand this group and make it more community-based. And the downside of Grin is, again, their usability is bad right now, and they know it, right? Now, the reason being that they don't have people or many people working full-time, right? And mm-hmm. B, at least in the beginning, they didn't have a way to attract and to pay people. Now they have this grant development fund with generous donations. By the way, Beam also made this relatively small donation early on, but now they have some funds. Although I don't think they started to deploy it yet, but they might hire more people. I think the reason those community-based and volunteer-based projects in a lot of cases have poor usability is because of the profile of a person who works on that. So
Right.
usually people working as volunteers and enjoying programming are like hardcore developers who just sit against their green and black monitors and just love command line, and they don't really care about the UI that much because frankly, if you ask me, a lot of things are much more convenient to do in command line than in the UI. I like it a lot as well, but real hardcore developers just sit there all the time in the terminal. So they don't even they're not very interested in that part, and you need other kinds of people around the table, people who love user experience, who love UI, who are designers. But those guys are usually less excited, about cryptography and stuff. So that's the difference, right, between Grin and Beam. So we, with our funding, we were able to put together a full-time team with all the necessary function, including like people who are crazy about cryptography and who are like real nerds and hardcore developers, but also including people who are crazy about the UI, and who love to build beautiful interfaces and who love to design things. So that's why we could so far deliver superior user experiences. So again, back to Grin, great project, great community, moving slower than we do, obviously, and user experience is a challenge.
I think that was a phenomenal, well-rounded answer that could give someone a really great landscape of, the state of privacy coins. So thanks for that. First of all, I'd love to sound clip that. I think that's going to add a lot of value for a lot of people there.
Okay.
On one of the Twitter comments, a guy named Anton Graf mentions, he says, in an interview in the middle of the last year, you mentioned that Beam could be a top 5 cryptocurrency. And so he says, how are you so sure of this? Obviously, nothing is certain. But more importantly, how do you intend to achieve this result?
So, of course, it was and it is a very ambitious statement. I think by combination of great privacy and user experience and a strong community, Beam, and in addition, all the things, with DeFi ecosystem and confidential assets, Beam has this potential. Because on the one hand, we have some of the core engineering principles of Bitcoin, proof of work, full decentralization. On the other hand, we have strong teams, strong engineering, strong user experience, and we have privacy and in the future opt-in auditability for business. So we have all the components to become one of the leading currencies. So whether it's top 5 or top 10, now we're in the top 100. We'll see, but again, we're less. And it may be a disadvantage. We're less about promising the moon tomorrow or promising that we will solve all the world problems and everything at once. But we are about great software, having this clear agenda of privacy, and having a strong team that just delivers. Okay, so with time, adoption will grow. And a combination of classic proof of work decentralization plus elegant protocol plus privacy plus usability gives us very good position to be in the top. When will it happen? If I knew, I don't. But this is the goal.
For sure. There's a lot of things and a lot of different aspects you guys are building out through Beam. Another comment on Twitter that could be potentially another utility that could really propel that value upwards. The question is there a way in which someone would be able to run a project or develop on top of Beam blockchain, essentially turning it into some kind of smart contract capable platform?
Just a sec. Sorry. Yeah. So this was also one of the downsides of Beam, right? Until now, because it was very hard for somebody from the outside to develop things. So in 2020, this is what we're planning. Okay, allow people to build bridges, allow people to create their own confidential assets, and eventually allow people to build some sort of smart contracts. We don't plan like a Turing complete smart contract development language like Solidity or something like this, but there will be a way to create smart contracts using scriptless scripts. So it's basically like C++ coding with a lot of cryptography. So hopefully people will be able to build more like second layer applications, and also everybody will be welcome to contribute to Beam development for the core protocol. But we're still not there for like an easy to use development language like Solidity. So we'll be making some steps in that direction to allow more applications, but still not like on Ethereum.
Mm-hmm. So with so much in the pipeline for you right now, and obviously, as CEO, you have a lot on your plate, juggling a million things. I always feel it's like, as a CEO, you're like the professional fire putter outer, like just trying to solve all the problems nobody else can solve. But what is the thing looking into the future that you're the most excited about? Not necessarily that may bring the most value, but you personally that like this is one thing that I really enjoy spending my time on in terms of Beam.
So for Beam, I'm very excited about confidential assets. I think it solves a real problem. The way to give privacy to, especially the way to give privacy to stablecoins. Okay, this is like a very well-defined problem to me, and I think we have a very good solution to that. So I expect this to be like a big success for Beam in terms of adoption. So if when we let people take their DAI coins, their USDC coins, move them to Beam and trade confidentially, I think a lot of people will jump on that and use that.
Gotcha. Thanks. And so just to kind of wrap it up, two questions that I've just kind of come across. So one recently was Anthony Pompliano posted this on Twitter. I thought it was an interesting question. I'd love to throw it by you. The question was, what is the last thing you learned by investing your time to research it?
What is the last thing I learned by investing my time to research it? Wow. So what is the last thing I researched, right? More or less,
yeah.
Okay, let me think. So I'm finishing now to go through programming Bitcoin. So yeah, I'm learning a lot about how blocks are built, and I love to get into this code and understand how things work. So I guess this is one of the things that I may be a little bit late to the party, right? In this respect, but yeah, this is something I'm now learning. So let's put it like this.
Very cool. Yeah, that helps give a much broader, well-rounded understanding. I find it challenging to talk with developers when you don't speak their language.
Concepts that you knew higher level. When you start, playing with the code, you have to learn them better. Yeah,
for sure. And the second question is a Tim Ferriss question, and this question is: what $100 purchase that you've made recently has drastically improved your life? $100 or less.
$100 or less purchase improved my life. Okay, Ledger Nano.
Ledger Nano, yeah, that's a good answer. Yeah,
it improved my life.
Right on.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's a good answer. All right. Well, Alexander, I really appreciate you taking the time. I
Yeah,
wish you
it
guys
was
the
a pleasure,
best.
Jeff.
Mhm.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
And so, for anyone who's tuning in, hope you guys enjoyed this episode with Alexander, the CEO of Beam. You can check them out anywhere online. And until next time, see you guys around.